Good evening, good day, and welcome to the 150th episode of the Ask Abhijit show. It's incredible. We have reached episode 150. It's all thanks to you all. Without your viewership, without your support, we would never have been here. I would have stopped after two, three episodes if nobody was watching. So, this is all thanks to you. I am very grateful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And obviously, we will keep going. Yeah. Um, let's before we do anything else, let's see who all is there on the live chat. I can see lots of people. I can see Ketan Wankhede, Manan Chopra, Aki, Saurabh Bhadoria, Nishad, Gaurav, Alpha, Harsh Dubey, Just a Guy, Devanand, Suhani, Yuvraj, Tanmay Deshpande, Unhuman, Unhuman, Vikas, Hirohito, Akshat, the Rockstar, Pratham, Soman, Rahul, Akash Kumar Singh, Melvin, Mahinder, Mortal Razor, Fatty Just Ate, Shivaji, Itape, Rohit, Lambodhar Obama, Vaibhav Gupta, Jay Ghuman, Arnav, Pushkar, the Dragon Emperor, Utkarsh Gupta, Unknown, Akshit Pandey, Manohar, Bhavyadeep, Aryan, Teja, Varun, Anantakrishnan V, Harbi on Wheels, Shubhayu, Zamiet, Anshul, Pamal Nandi, Abhirup Mishra, Kingstone, Crystal, Garvit, Abhishek, Mr. Bonfire, Lone Rider, Overlord, Harsh Dubey, Ritvik, Alpha, Aditi, Akshit, Priya, Abhirup, Harsh Dubey, and lots of other people. Trupti, Sambar Development Fund, Lone Rider, Hello Tom, Uncle Biden, Dev Patel, Nilay, Kunal, Giuseppe Di Fraia, and lots of other people. Good evening, good day to all of you, wherever you are. Welcome to the live stream. So let us now, with that said, get into the questions. What shall we take first? Okay, let's take the obvious question first. Lots of people have asked me this question, and it is a question about our friend Mr. Veer Das. Jain says, I want to ask only one thing. Ranveer show with Veer Das and your take on that. An Indian says, your reply to Veer Das at TRS calling your brown coolie comment racist. Divya says, did you watch Veer Das's response to what you said in Ranveer's show? It was hilarious, playing victim card and all that. Yes, I did happen to watch that. I haven't watched the entire podcast. I've seen the clip in which he supposedly responds to my criticism of him on the same podcast, Ranveer Alabadia's podcast, the TRS, the Ranveer Show. So a few months ago, I've done, as you know, many podcasts with Ranveer. So a few months ago, he had asked me, Ranveer, on his podcast about my views, my opinion about Veer Das's actions abroad, the things he said about India on foreign soil and all that. And I had essentially criticized him. Uh, I don't remember exactly what I said. I haven't watched that clip again. It's been so long. But apparently, I called him a brown coolie. Yeah, and so Veer Das. So Ranveer, in this clip that I saw a couple of days ago, he asks Veer Das to respond to my criticism, and Veer Das says that me calling him a brown coolie is racist. Apparently, yeah. So, so me calling Veer Das a brown coolie is apparently racist. Before I even address that, it's perfectly fine for Veer Das to make all kinds of anti-India, anti-Hindu statements. It's fine for him to call all Indian men rapists. That's not offensive. But me calling him brown coolie is offensive. He gets upset. What sort of logic is this? I mean, that's hypocrisy. Now, when it comes to him saying that me calling him a brown coolie is racist, is it even possible to be racist against someone of your own ethnicity? I mean, Veer Das is Indian. I'm Indian. We are the same people. We are the same ethnicity. We have essentially the same heritage, same past, same ancestry. How can I be racist to my own ethnicity? Is it even possible? Yeah. And um, maybe he has taken issue to this word coolie. Yeah. And maybe the term coolie is apparently racist in his mind. So Veer Das is attempting to construct a career in the United States. He must be very uh, aware of US culture. Is he aware of something called the rap industry, the rap music industry in the US? It is dominated by African American people. Yeah, all these rap stars. Yeah, Coolio and LL Cool J. I don't know. There must be many more these days. I'm not really keeping track of it. Now, in the US rap industry, and Virdas says that me using the word coolie against him is like using the N word against an African American person, black person. So he's equating coolie with the N word. In the US rap industry, if you listen to the rap music, they use the N word all the time. In the US, it is perfectly acceptable for a black person to use the N word. For it is used sometimes as a term of endearment among black people, sometimes in other ways as well. Yeah, but it's perfectly acceptable for a black people to use the N word. It is completely unacceptable for a white person to use the N word because of the history, because the white people invented this word, and they have used it for centuries in a derogatory way, in a racist way against black people. So for a white person to use the N word is completely unacceptable. Black people use it all the time. That's how it is. That's a social convention. Similarly, among Indians, the same way, if a white person were to use the word coolie for an Indian, or for a Chinese person, or a Japanese person, or an Eastern Asian person, that would be racism. But an Indian person using that word coolie is obviously not racism. You can't be racist against yourself. So this is a rather ridiculous thing that Veer Das has said. He's trying to portray himself as a victim here. Yeah. And if the word coolie is apparently racist in his mind, then what is this exactly? The 1983 movie Coolie, starring one of Bollywood's great superstars, Amitabh Bachchan. Is this a racist movie? Or maybe it's an old movie from 1983. Maybe times have changed. Yeah. Then what about this movie, Coolie number one, with some Bollywood people who I don't really know? This is a very recent movie, Coolie number one. Is this also a racist movie, Virdas? What sort of logic do people come up with? How is the term coolie racist when an Indian person uses it? Yeah. If a white person calls an Indian racist, or a Chinese racist, or a Japanese person, or anybody else racist, calls them coolie. If a white person uses the word coolie, that's racism. An Indian person using the word coolie is not racism. Now let's understand. Some people would say that I use the term coolie out of anger or out of emotion. Well, that's not the case. Yeah. Let's what is the meaning of the term coolie? What's the definition of coolie in the historic sense? A coolie is a person who carries heavy loads. Yes, typically these are the porters you will see at railway stations. Historically, they've been used. You had these porters who would carry heavy weights on railway stations, and they were called coolies. Yeah, historically. So a coolie is a person who carries heavy loads. That's what a coolie is. Now, so I use the term coolie as in the sense of a brown man, Veer Das, carrying the white man's burden. You may have heard of the poem White Man's Burden, which was written by the very racist Indian born British poet Rudyard Kipling, The White Man's Burden. And in this poem, he says that the white people are their responsibility is to civilize the non-white people, because non-white people are backward, primitive, all that, barbaric. Yeah. And the white people are civilized, so it is the white man's burden to civilize the non-white people, the brown people, the black people, and so on and so forth, the Eastern Asian people, the Indians, and all that. So even today, these racist tropes, these racist attitudes still continue. So today you will see in the West, in the US, in the UK, their publications like the Guardian, the New York Times, the New York Post, the Washington Post, and so on and so forth. They carry these very strongly anti-India articles, but they usually employ Indian origin people to write these things. Very racist, very patronizing, very derogatory articles about India, and it's usually Indian origin people who are made to write these articles, so that they can say that we didn't write it. It's an Indian origin person who wrote it. Our hands are clean. So today, it's perfectly acceptable to be racist against Indians in the West, and especially against Hindus. Yeah, but not against certain other religions. So racism is acceptable against Indians and against Hindus in a certain way, and they typically employ Indian origin people to write these derogatory articles. That means that they are making the Indian origin people, the brown people, to carry the white man's burden, and they can say that our hands are clean. So Veer Das is one of those brown coolies. He is carrying the white man's burden. Yeah, in the sense that he's going outside of India. He's performing apparently as a comic in the US and other places. I believe, I don't know. And he's, ridiculing India. He's making fun of India. He's criticizing India. Uh, so that is what I meant by Veer Das being a brown coolie. He is carrying the white man's burden on behalf of the people who he wishes to please. Yeah, because he wants to create a career in the US. And obviously he's not a very funny guy. He's rather unfunny, but yeah, he serves the purpose. He serves the purpose of carrying the white man's burden. So that's what I meant by calling Veer Das a brown coolie, and I stand by it. It is not racist in any way whatsoever. His contention that I was being racist against him is risible. It is asinine. It is laughable. It's ridiculous. Yes. Now, the thing is, Veer Das, did he address my criticism in his when Ranveer invited him to do so? I don't think he was able to address my criticism at all. My criticism was, why did you criticize India abroad? Why did you make fun of India abroad? Why did you ridicule India abroad? It's you will never see an American person coming to India and then ridiculing their country. You will never see a Chinese person coming to India and ridiculing their country. You will never see a person from the UK coming to India and ridiculing the UK. You will never see a French person coming to India and ridiculing France. But you will see lots of Indians, these brown coolies, who go to the West and attempt to ingratiate themselves over there by criticizing India, ridiculing India, making fun of India, saying whatever these people want you to say. Yeah. If you really care for India, in friendship, how it is, when two people are real, genuine friends, and one person needs to be criticized, that criticism is done in private. It's never done in public. When you have a small child and the child is maybe needs some improvement, you do the criticism of the child in private. You don't do it in public. Yeah, so if Veer Das really cares about India and he thinks India needs to change and India needs to improve, he could have said these things in India. But no, he chose to go half the planet away, the other side of the planet, and make fun of India in the US. And my question was, why did he do that? He has not answered the question. He has no answers. Veer Das is very brave to speak about India abroad. He has very bravely criticized India abroad, made fun of India abroad. He has very bravely ridiculed India abroad. Yeah. And you think that's bravery? There are no consequences for ridiculing India. There are no adverse consequences for ridiculing Hinduism. There are consequences for ridiculing certain other religions in some other countries, but he won't do that. So he comes to Ranveer's show. Ranveer gives him the opportunity to address this, and he essentially plays the victim card. Yeah, he's making fun of India over there and all that. Now, I would like to invite Veer Das to, well, if he wants to, he can do this. He speaks about two Indias. Well, I would like to tell Veer Das that there are two Americas also. There are two Americas. Yeah, there is one America that he wishes to live in, the wonderful America that he wants to be a part of. But there is a second America, an America that conducted the genocide of at least 56 million Native Americans. Will Veer Das speak about that? There is a second America which has a history of horrific racism against black people and non-white people, which still continues. Racial profiling, killing by cop, and so much more. Will Veer Das speak about this? There is a second America whose pharmaceutical industry exploits its own people. It's all coming out these days. Will Veer Das speak about that second America? There is a second America where homelessness is rampant, where gun crime is rampant, drug abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse is rampant. Will Veer Das speak about that? There is an America where California has descended into hell-like status. There is no rule of law and order. There are people doing drugs on the street. There are people crapping on the streets. There are people living on the streets. The homelessness, it's terrible, and there is no rule of law. Will Veer Das speak about that? There is a city called Chicago in the US, where there are more crimes and rapes in a weekend than you have in India, in Delhi or Mumbai over a month. Will we thus speak about that? Will we thus speak about the US, the second America, which killed 2 million Iraqis, innocent men, women, children, innocent people in their invasion of Iraq, directly and indirectly. The shock and awe campaign, which flattened cities and killed everyone within. Will Virda speak about that? There is the second America, which is still right now as we speak carrying out a war by proxy in Yemen and killing civilians. Will Virda speak about that? There is a second America which tested two nuclear weapons on Japanese civilians in 1945. And this second America has been occupying Japan militarily against the will of its citizens since 1945. It's still happening today. Will Virdas speak about that? So I'm inviting Virdas to be balanced. You spoke about two Indias. Why don't you go and speak about two Americas and speak about that in the US? Let's see if you can do that. He will not do it because he's a coward. If he does that, if Virdas does that, his precious little visa will be torn up. His hopes of a green card and future citizenship will evaporate, and he will have to come back to India, and he will have to entertain Indians with his comedy, his non-existent comedy. That's the problem. So that is my, if you want a response to Virdas, that's my response to Virdas. If you dare speak about two Americas, go ahead, brother, go for it. Yeah, I invite you to do that. Let's see if you can speak about two Americas in the US or even in India. Come to India and speak about it. Let's see if you do that. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about this. And I also saw that lots of people are criticizing Ranveer. Please don't do that. Why? What's the need? What's the reason for that? If Ranveer had not invited Veerdas on his podcast, you would not have seen Veerdas's response. Yes. So please don't criticize Ranveer and whatever else. Yeah. I really appreciate the fact that Ranveer for inviting Veerdas and giving him the opportunity to give his non-response to my criticism. All right. So yeah, there it goes. That's my response to this entire thing. I hope the matter rests here, and let's see if Veerdas goes ahead and speaks about two Americas the way he was so bravely happy to speak about two Indias. Yeah, let's see if he does that. All right. Okay, second question is lots of people have asked me about this as well. So Harsh says the government is planning to open Yale, Oxford, etc. foreign universities in India. Is it good or will it destroy our society more? So foreign branches in India of foreign universities. And geopolitical Dubey says the government of India plans to invite foreign universities to set up their branches in India. How do you see this decision? Will it affect our educational centers? So yes, I heard about this. I'm not sure what rules and regulations are going to be imposed on these foreign universities, which would be desirous of opening their branches in India. So until we know that, we don't. Until so right now we don't know that. So how do I see this? So I think this could be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, if foreign universities are allowed to open branches in India, then lots of Indians who go abroad for those foreign degrees may not have to do that anymore. Yeah, lots of Indian youngsters, they go abroad because the Indian education system, we know, is not up to the mark. It's not where it should be. And that's why they feel it's better to get a foreign degree. So now you could get a Yale degree, Harvard degree, Oxford degree, whatever else degree in India itself. So the expenditure will go down drastically. Obviously, these universities, I'm sure, will be kind of expensive, but it won't be anywhere as expensive as having to, go abroad, and you may not get a scholarship there, and it's extremely expensive. Like 20 30 lakhs a year or something like that. That's what I hear. Yeah. So you won't have to pay that much. So in that sense, it's good for those who feel the need to go outside of India to get a degree. They will be able to get it in India itself. Secondly, it will certainly give a great amount of competition to India's archaic, moribund academic institutions, universities, etc. It will give a great deal of competition to them. It will also be good for people who are seeking jobs as teachers and professors or whatever. They will get good options. they could also, it will be good for them also to on their CV that I taught at so and so university. And obviously, so the best fresh talent may be recruited in these foreign universities. So it is good for them, those who are seeking jobs and all that. And it also overall increase the quality of education. Yeah. So I'm talking about the positives right now. So it will give I think a much needed wake up call to the Indian universities, who have had no competition, who have had a captive audience, and who have the worst of standards. We have some institutions in India, the top level institutions, like the which may be considered to be world class. We have really good professors and scientists, etc. In some of them, Indian Institute of Science, IITs. There are lots of problems in the IITs as well. I've spoken about that. But overall, it's gonna. But if you look at the other universities in India, the standards are nothing to be proud of, and I'm sure we all know that. Yeah. So it's gonna give a tremendous amount of competition to those universities that have been doing nothing all these years. Yeah. And it's going to be a wake up call for them. So it's now going to be survive or sink or swim, that sort of thing, hopefully. Yeah. These are the positives. Now obviously we will have to regulate what these universities, these foreign universities, they teach in India. We don't want them teaching critical race theory and try uh, to morph that into critical caste theory or whatever. They'll try to do that. We should decide what we want them to teach and what we don't want them to teach. Ideally, I would like to see them offer education in the hard sciences and in uh, engineering and technology. I don't want to see humanities and all those fake subjects. History, of course, is not a fake subject. Sociology also can be a wonderful uh, field of study and research. Yeah. But the way it's being taught these days is horrific. It's terrible. And please understand, there's no such thing as a social science. Social science is a misnomer. It's not a science. These are not sciences. So I would say that the government needs to be very clear about what it would like, with what it would like, what value it would like these universities to bring to India, and what we don't want these universities to do. We don't want them to try to fragment Indian society more and teach the woke culture, which is now rife in the West. Yeah. So that is a big danger. We don't want any of that. If I were in charge of this, of course I'm not. I'm just saying hypothetically. If I were in charge of this, I would say only sciences, hard sciences, engineering, and technology. We want that. We want those skills. We want that knowledge. We want that high level of education in the hard sciences, in technology, in education. Yeah, not in the social sciences. We don't need that. So that's what I would do. Yeah, that's how as far as I would go. I would not want them to start teaching anything they like. There needs to be very a clear set of guidelines, not guidelines, but preconditions. So I think it's a double-edged sword. Like I said, there are pros, there are cons, there are positives, significant positives. It's gonna finally, hopefully, wake up the Indian universities, or maybe make them irrelevant. That would be great, because these universities, Indian universities, these professors who have jobs for life, 99%, I would say that 95% of the professors are useless. 5% I am sure are wonderful. We know some of them. Yesterday I had Professor Desi Raju on my podcast. What a brilliant man he is. What a fascinating book he's written. It's over here. Yeah. So we have brilliant minds in India, no doubt about it. But that's the 2%. That's the 2%. In maybe in a place like the IISc, Indian Institute of Science, they may be, most of them will be brilliant. Yeah. But in most universities, our professors are 95% of them are mediocre, to be kind to them. Yeah. Most of them are absolutely useless. We know that. So these new universities could, if they end up making the existing legacy in Indian institutions, universities, irrelevant, then it may be a good thing. Yeah. So maybe this could be a way of revamping our education system over the next 10, 20 years. And we need that. We do need that. And we need the right kind of thinking and all that, scientific approach. Uh, so we would like the sciences, not any of the other nonsense that these universities are known to bring. And maybe we should also decide what sort of ratio we want of the professors. Maybe like in the IPL, in an 11-member team, I think how many foreigners are allowed? 3, 4? I'm not sure. 2. So we need to have that sort of ratio also in the universities, in the staff. So maybe 80% staff should be Indian, 20% foreign, that sort of mix or something. So we can maybe derive some inspiration from the IPL and various sporting leagues. Yeah, you have to think creatively and obviously logically as well. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's an interesting experiment, and if we do it well, it could really end up revolutionizing our education system. Obviously, the education policy also has to change, and I'm not sure about the whole reservations thing. If you bring reservations into this, then what's the point of doing anything at all? So yeah, that's where it is. We still don't have sufficient clarity, but I think it's a promising thing if you do it right. All right, all right. Samarth says, are India, China, and Russia fighting against each other for influence in Central Asia? Interestingly, all have bases in Tajikistan. Yes, now we know. Yeah. Should India improve its ties with the Russian led CSTo nations? What's the full form of that? We'll see. Especially in defense cooperation to keep an eye on China. The Quad focuses more on the in the Pacific region. Russia needs India against both the US and China. So okay, let's look at Central Asia. The map. Where's the map? There is never an episode of any of my live streams without the map on the screen. We need the map to orient ourselves. Here is the map. Now we are staring at the Indian Ocean. Wonderful. Let's go to Central Asia, which is essentially the old Uttara Madhya region, which once belonged to our people. Yeah, once. Maybe in the future, we'll see. Okay, this is Central Asia, which essentially is north of Afghanistan. Up to Afghanistan, it's part of the Indian subcontinent, and culturally, it's not Central Asian. Then you have even Tajikistan is actually not Turkic. Tajikistan is an Indo-Iranic nation. Yeah, most of the people. But if you look at the Xinjiang region, which is currently occupied by China, then if you look at Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and all these nations, it's all Central Asia. Some people like to include northern Afghanistan into that as well. I don't, but whatever. Okay. So the question is are India, China, Russia fighting each other for influence? So first of all, let us disabuse ourselves of the notion that India has much influence in Central Asia. You only have influence if you have a direct land access to this place. Yeah. And our land access to Central Asia has been cut off since 1947, 1948. Thanks to the British and thanks to our wonderful leaders who did nothing to change the status quo, whatever was imposed on India. So India has no land access to Central Asia. If we take back POJK, then we will once again regain access to Afghanistan, our historical access to Afghanistan. Maybe we should take a little bit more than POJK, because the Wakhan corridor is a very mountainous region. If you want to build roads, it's really, really hard to build highways and railways in the Wakhan corridor. So we need essentially more than the Wakhan corridor, more than POJK. We need a little more, maybe the northern slice of the temporary artificial nation of Pakistan and all that. Yep. So if we regain land access that has been denied to us for the past 80 or so years, then we will start having an influence in Central Asia. First of all, we will be able to start helping out the Afghans more substantially than we are right now, and so on. So right now, India has, we could say, minimal or insignificant direct influence in Central Asia. Obviously, all the Central Asian nations are favorably predisposed towards India because India is a non-hegemonic, non-threatening nation. Yes, nobody fears India, which in a sense is a good thing because everyone's open to cooperate. Of course, it's also a bad thing, but that's a different story. So, and as you say, all three nations have bases in Tajikistan. Now, first understand this: when it comes to Central Asia, the former Soviet republics, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, etc., Tajikistan, today Russia regards this entire region, these former Soviet republics, as part of their extended strategic neighborhood. They will not tolerate any other nation encroaching into their strategic sphere of influence, strategic zone of influence. The Russians regard these nations as their exclusive zone of strategic influence. All right, that's how it is. And the Russians conduct military exercises with almost all nations on a regular, ongoing basis to maintain those ties and to ensure that these nations remember who is essentially the boss. That's how it is. So now if India has two air bases in Tajikistan, or one, or whatever it is, we have gone through that. Yeah, there's the Aini air base and the Farkhor air base. Aini is definitely operational. Farkhor maybe not so much. So if India has air bases in Tajikistan, it is only because the Russians have allowed it. That is how we have to understand this. Had the Russians been not open to this, it would not have happened. The Tajiks would have said, no, thank you, India. We are not in a position to allow you to open an airbase here. So because Russia has acquiesced to this arrangement, that's why it's happened. And the Chinese also have a military base in the region of Tajikistan, the Pamir region, which the Chinese consider to be disputed. They have a military base close to the Afghan Wakhan corridor. So the Chinese are eyeing the Wakhan corridor for a variety of reasons. They always have this expansionist mindset. So now I'm not sure how happy the Russians are about the Chinese military base in Tajikistan, but maybe the Russians also need to, mollify, pacify China and keep China on their side. And there's hard negotiations that happen, and the Chinese must have extracted this pound of flesh. So it's good for India that we have these two footholds in Central Asia. We have very ancient relationships with the region. That's a whole different story. But influence apart from that is very less. The air bases in Tajikistan that India has are only because the Tajiks are happy to have that. Yeah. So we obviously have a good relationship with the Tajiks. Apart from that, we see, if you want to, let's say I want to go to Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. Most Indians don't even know about Kyrgyzstan. It's right north of Jammu and Kashmir. You go to Ladakh, you go to Pangong or whatever. It's just, it's geographically kind of a stone's throw away, the nation of Kyrgyzstan, and Indians don't even know about it. If you want to take a flight to Bishkek, you have to go through Dubai or Abu Dhabi or whatever. There are no direct flights, as far as I know, between India and Bishkek, or India and Tashkent, Dushanbe. You have to go via, you have to take a circuitous route. So the people to people relationship is kind of non-existent. There are no direct flights between these nations, India and these nations. So it's something that India can work on. So the influence that India has is kind of less. So it's basically right now more like a Russia versus China kind of game that's being played. And I'm sure the Russians would like Indian support in this, obviously, and India would be definitely willing to support Russia in whatever geostrategic endeavors they have in the region. We don't want the Chinese to encroach in this region and become more influential than whatever little they are right now. The Chinese obviously have this BRI thing, which they would like to revive. The past 3 years it's been dead, the Belt and Road Initiative, and all of that goes through Central Asia. They already have some rail lines and all that go all the way to Europe. So it's right now a game of Russia versus China. If India is able to manage to change the geographical status in northern India, then India could become a player in Central Asia. Yeah, but until we do that, it's just it's all it's India's influence is minimal and essentially non-existent. We have good diplomatic relations with them. We have very friendly diplomatic relations with these nations. Yeah, but apart from that, there's nothing we are doing. If you want to have real influence, you have to start building roads that connect India to that region. You have to start building railway lines that connect India to that region. You have to start having daily flights between India, maybe from Delhi or Mumbai to, let's say, Dushanbe or Ashgabat or Almaty or Bishkek or all that. Astana, Karaganda. Then you will have some influence. And that influence is typically constructed through infrastructure and supply chains and supply routes. We don't have that right now. Influence is not created through words. Geopolitical, geostrategic influence is an outcome of creating infrastructure. And India is currently not in a position to create infrastructure. So for India to start having an influence again after almost a century in Central Asia, we will have to reconfigure the geography of northern India, which is something that actually needs to be done on a priority basis. Yeah, we need to find a way, one way or the other, of retaking POK, taking some more territory out of the artificial nation of Pakistan, connecting once again, reconnecting with our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan. Yeah, and through Afghanistan, we can move into Central Asia, with obviously with the assent of the Afghan government and all that, which I'm sure they'll be happy to. So that is the deal. Should India improve its ties with the other CSTo nations? Yeah, we should improve our ties with all these nations. Let's start with having daily flights between India and these nations. Yeah, Central Asia is a wonderful place, beautiful place, good culture, beautiful scenery, mountains, lakes, valleys. You look at Tajikistan, it kind of reminds you of Ladakh. Yeah, so very very beautiful landscape and all that. So it's a great place for tourism. You open that up for Indians will be happy to go there. Indians nowadays go to so many different nations for tourism. Why not Central Asia, which is in our backyard? So why can't India start daily flights between maybe Delhi or Mumbai and the various capitals of the Central Asian nations? Why can't we do that? Why are we so um, not taking these obvious steps? So that's something we could do, and we can obviously start exporting weapons and all that to these nations if they want, or find other creative ways of improving our cooperation and coordination with these nations. So yeah, that's what I say should happen. But the main thing is we need to reconfigure the geography of northern India and make it more favorable for us. And that's something that needs to happen on a priority basis. Yes. Rodrajit says, how can we stop the foreign fundings for anti-India activities? Do you think our government is doing enough to prevent these fundings? I think the government is very aware of what's happening. I'm sure it's monitoring the bank accounts of all the anti-India organizations that exist within India. We know that most of them get foreign funding, yeah, funding from abroad. Now, I'm not going to specify the names of any organizations. I think we all know roughly what they are. Yeah, I am sure the Indian government is keeping a very close eye on it. Now, the question is, why doesn't India stop all this? Because there is foreign geopolitical pressure. Most of this funding comes from the West. Some of it may come from other places. The other places from which the funding comes, we have good relationships. We have developed good close relationships of late with those other places. When it comes to the West is antagonistic to India. They would like nothing than to see India balkanized. And what better way to balkanize India than create fissures and divisions within India? And for that you use, well, religion and other things, and we know what the deal is. I don't want to go into specifics. Yeah, and for that you need money, and that money comes in the form of US dollars. Billions of US dollars are poured into these activities, into the bank accounts of various organizations in India every year. Billions of dollars for various such activities that all fall under freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and human rights, and all that. Yeah, right now the world order, the so-called rules-based world order, is entirely dominated by the West, which means the US, and you cannot do certain things beyond a certain point right now. Yeah, so they are able to influence the internal affairs of India also, less than they influence the internal affairs of other nations, but it's still there. And certain things, it is maybe not the right time to do it. We need to first rise a little bit more. So how do we stop the foreign fundings is the question. Hmm? The foreign fundings, once again I repeat, come in the form of US dollars. For a nation like India to, let's say, India has a certain amount of foreign exchange reserves. Yes, I don't know what the quantity is right now, but let's say India wants to acquire an extra $100 billion in terms of US dollars in foreign exchange reserves. What does India have to do for that? India has to trade and earn that extra $100 billion. If China wants to increase its foreign exchange reserves by $100 billion, they have to trade and earn that money. It's a lot of effort. Yeah. If the US wants to earn $100 billion, what do? They print it. They print the money, either real money or digitally. That money is controlled by them. They can create new money out of thin air anytime they want. That is the unfair advantage the US has. And that's why they can keep on pushing any amount of money into India for anti-India activities. Do you understand this? That is the true strength and power that they have. So, right now, there is a concerted move in a certain direction, geopolitically. Nations are looking for alternatives to the US dollar. There is talk of a BRICS currency. India is now the Indian rupee is now accepted in certain nations as a foreign, as a currency for foreign trade in Sri Lanka, in other nations as well. The Indian UPI is getting it is being adopted in various nations. So and many nations are now willing to trade, willing to purchase oil using Indian rupees. The Russians are they are willing to take Indian rupees in exchange for oil. Yeah. So the Indian rupees standing has grown, strength has grown. Similarly, the Chinese yuan, the Russian ruble have all strengthened. Yeah. You may see the various currency exchange rates and all, and you will see it's not doing well and all. Look at the big picture. If you look at the fluctuations of currencies on a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month basis, you will not see the real picture. The big picture is that the non-dollar currencies like the rupee, the ruble, and the yuan, especially maybe even the real, are now becoming significant alternatives to the US dollar. Not yet. It could happen, especially if they could combine some their strengths and create a basket currency like the BRICS currency which is being proposed. If something like that happens, it's going to be a big blow to the US dollar and to the euro. The euro is essentially controlled by the US. So the moment this happens and there is an alternative for the world, and it's a real viable alternative, a currency that is backed by a basket of genuine commodities, not promises and debt, then the world will be more inclined possibly to start using that currency. If that currency is a proxy for gold, if the currency is based on a genuine basket of commodities, and then the US dollar, even if they keep printing it will become, if there is a genuine alternative available, then the US dollar will lose that strength that it has. And then it will be difficult for these foreign powers, Western powers, to fund these anti-India activities to the amount at least that they are doing right now. Yeah. So we have to strengthen our currency. We have to strengthen our economy. We have to maybe join forces with certain other nations and create an alternative system. You do that, then the current system will become weakened. There is a global desire, it looks like, for moving away from the US dollar. People have had enough of the US dollar and the hegemony of the Americans. So if that happens, then the power of the US dollar will become significantly weakened. I won't say that it will evaporate overnight. If it evaporates, then the anti-India activities will cease. They will stop. Yep. Because most of it is being done through the US dollar. I would say almost all of it. So that is the thing. So for these anti-India activities to stop, India needs to get stronger. The Indian economy needs to cross $5 trillion and then $10 trillion of annual GDP. That's number one. We need to get stronger. Once that happens, we will be in a stronger position to negotiate diplomatically and to safeguard our interests. A weak nation is open to all kinds of external interference. A strong nation can push back. So India needs to get stronger and stronger and stronger. That's what needs to happen. I understand people are not happy that the government is not doing this or doing that, but the government sees things and knows things that we are not able to see. I can guess at what those things are. I don't know I don't have the specific details, but I understand how the world works. So we have to understand that there are lots of things out there that we are not able to see. It's all lying in plain sight. The more you study, the more you analyze, the more visible it becomes. But that's how it is. So the funding is all through the US dollar. As the US dollar weakens, the funding will also weaken. Yeah. So India needs to rise. India needs to get stronger. That's the deal. Anish says, well, thank you, Anish. Thank you. The question is, please tell us more about the alternative origin story featuring Deus Pitru, and Prithvi Mata, especially since it's directly related to Zeus and Jupiter in even the Norse deities. Sadly, most of what is there of this ancient story is totally pro AIT. Okay, so Deus Pitru and Prithvi Mata. These are the you could say in the Rig Veda there are mentions of these deities, these divinities, and Deus Pitru and Prithvi Mata are essentially the parents of all the other gods. Yeah, whether it is Agni, whether it is whichever other Rigvedic deities you have, the entire pantheon of gods, of Hindu gods and goddesses. Their parents are Dyaus Pitru and Prithvi Mata, the sky father and earth mother. That's how it is. Surya is also a son, the offspring of Dyaus Pitru and Prithvi Mata. So these are the old primordial parent god and goddess in the Rig Veda, older than the oldest. Yeah, even when it comes to Indra, the parentage is kind of there's a lack of clarity on the parentage. In some verses, he is referred to Indra as the twin of Agni, the twin brother of Agni, and Agni we know is a child of Dyaus Pitru and Prithvi Mata. So by that sense, Indra would be the son of Dyaus Pitru and Prithvi Mata, and so on. So Indra is referred to as the king of the gods. Yeah, the greatest of the gods, the great warrior, and there are so many references to him in the Rig Veda, more than any other god, if I'm not mistaken. But the primordial god and goddess are Dyaus Pitru and Prithvi Mata. And you find parallels with this in other religious systems as well. If you look at the old religion of the Turco-Mongol people, Tengrism. It's called Tengrism, but it's not an ism. It's not an Abrahamic religion. There are lots of people who claim that Tengrism is a monotheistic Abrahamic religion. Such nonsense. In Tengrism, also there's a whole pantheon of gods, and the two primary deities are Tengri, the sky father, and Umai, the earth mother. So once again, you have this parallel. Yeah, it's a polytheistic thing. Now, Dyaus Pitru and Prithvi Mata are the two parents of all the other gods in the Rig Vedic pantheon, which eventually became the pantheon of all the Indo-European, of the entire Indo-European culture, which spread across Eurasia westwards out of India. Yeah? There is no alternative origin story. This is the story. This is the thing. You can look up the Rig Vedic text and all that. It's all there. There are even English translations available online. I will not look it up now and put it on the screen. I'm sure you can do that much of homework if you are so interested. So, now, when it comes to Zeus and Jupiter, so Dyaus Pitru became Zeus Pater, and Zeus Pater became Jupiter. That's how it went. Even Western encyclopedias and all that will tell you that. So the Greek god Zeus Pater is clearly the same. It's a copy. It's a replica of the older Vedic god Dyaus Pitru. Dyaus Pitru became Zeus Pater. But in the case of Zeus Pater, he also has incorporated elements of the great god Indra. So it looks like they have combined elements of two deities in one. In all the Western gods that are modeled after Lord Indra, Zeus is modeled after Lord Indra. His primary weapon is a thunderbolt, which is Indra's primary weapon, the Vajra. And Indra has two Vajras. One is the thunderbolt and one is the hammer, which is also called the Vajra. The Tibetan Vajra and all, these are hammer-shaped objects that are supposed to be holy. So that is the club, the mace or the hammer. So Indra had two Vajras. One is the thunderbolt and one is the club or the hammer. So Zeus also has the thunderbolt, and he also is supposed to be a hammer god. Jupiter is nothing but the Roman version of Zeus. So Jupiter is also a thunder god and all that. And then you have the Nordic deity, the pantheon of deities, whose primary great god is Thor, who is nothing but the same as Zeus and Jupiter and Parjanya and all that. Perun, the Slavic Perun, a combination of these of these deities. So, and when it comes to Zeus and Jupiter and Thor, they very clearly have the same story as Indra. Indra is the oldest of them all. So Indra, in the Rig Veda, is mentioned as having defeated and killed a great serpent, a great ahi. The old Sanskrit word for snake or serpent is ahi. Ahi. So there was this great ahi called Ahi Vritra, who had encircled the oceans of the world, all the waters of the world, and this had caused a great drought, and everybody would die because Vritra had done this. So Indra went ahead and fought this great serpent Vritra and defeated him, and he was able to liberate the oceans of the world, and water was once again available to all humans. So that was one of Indra's great heroic deeds. So in the story of Zeus, he also battles a great sea serpent, and defeats him. In the story of Jupiter, obviously the same story. In the story of Thor, Thor defeats a great sea monster called Jormungandr, and it's the same story all over again. So they are all modeled uh, after Indra actually, and they also have incorporated some elements of the oldest god that we know of, which is Dyosh Pitru, because Zeus Pater is named after Dyosh Pitru, but he incorporates elements of Indra. So I think what happened is that there were multiple migrations out of India at some point in time, in the aftermath of the battle of the 10 kings, which is mentioned in the Rig Veda itself, and many other later migrations also. And these migrants, they went so far out of India that they kind of lost touch with their ancestral culture, but they continued it in some form, and certain stories got combined together, certain divinities got combined together, and that's how we had the rise of composite deities like Zeus Pater, who is an amalgam of Yosh Pitru and Indra, and then that a copy of that was Jupiter, because the Romans, they absorbed gods of everybody they defeated. They defeated the Greeks. The Romans and the Greeks are actually very very similar people, more or less the same people at that point in time, 2,000 years ago. And Greece is right, almost right next to Rome, across the Ionian Sea, the Aegean Sea, all that. Ionian Sea. Um, so yeah, so then they absorbed the Greek god and they started calling him Jupiter, or maybe they had done it before. I don't know exactly what the chronology is, but they are the same divinity, Zeus and Jupiter. So that is the deal. The Norse deities are nothing but the Norse representation of the old Rigvedic pantheon. The Greek pantheon of gods, with some exceptions, is also a replica of the the Vedic pantheon of gods. Obviously, some gods are unique, that may have sprung out of the imagination of the Greeks. Some Roman gods may have sprung out of the imagination of the Romans, but the overall structure of the pantheon is essentially more or less identical as the oldest, the original pantheon, which is the Rigvedic pantheon. That's the deal. But yeah, I would invite you all, I would encourage you all to go ahead and read the Rig Veda for an understanding of Dyosh, Pitru, and Prithvi Mata. There are several verses that refer to these divinities. If you look at if you read an English translation, the problem is that you will not see any reference to Dyosh Pitru. In English translations, he is referred to as the Sky Father or the Heavenly Father. They don't use the term Dyosh Pitru for him. They use the term Sky Father or Heavenly Father or something like that. So yeah, you have to, ideally you should read the Sanskrit version or a translation into your native language, maybe whatever Indian native language is your mother tongue. That would be a more accurate translation, I would say. But yeah, go ahead and read it if you are interested in this. It's a very fascinating topic. Rodrajit says, should the Indian government spend money on bullet trains or the Vande Bharat Express, or should the Indian government improve our local trains first? What's your opinions on this? So life is not a zero sum game. It's not a question of either this or that. Only one thing we should do first. It's not like that. It's we get this question all the time. India has so much poverty and so much all that. So why is India developing a space program? Why are you developing rockets and futuristic technology when you have so many problems? Well, they did not ask the same question to the Russians. Russia was devastated in the aftermath of World War II. You have no idea of the devastation Russia suffered. The Russians went ahead with the space program. Why did nobody ask the same question to the Russians? Yeah, the Chinese, until the 1990s, were an extremely poor nation, but they've had a space program since the 1960s and 1970s with the help of the Russians. Yeah. So the thing is that you have to develop everything in parallel. You can't prioritize only one thing. I will only do this first, and only when I perfect this will I go for something else. That's not how it works. You have to. India is a nation of 1.3 billion people. India is, the per capita GDP is still not where it should be, but India is no longer a weak, poor nation. As a nation, we are actually powerful and we are rich. The government has access to incredible amounts of money. Yes. So we need to work on these things together at the same time, in parallel. We need to have start building a bullet train network. We need to start building a high speed rail network like the Vande Bharat expresses. And in the meanwhile, we should also start working on improving the quality of local trains. And eventually, we want to replace those local trains also with much faster trains. It's all something you need to do in parallel, not one after the other in sequence. No, not like that. Okay. So what the government is doing is exactly the right thing. Let people criticize. And yeah, the purpose of all this criticism through the media and various other people is to influence the minds of the ordinary people and make them feel like the government is doing something wrong and the government is using our money for the wrong purposes. That's not the case. We need a high speed rail network. Ideally, we should have bullet trains everywhere. Bullet trains are expensive, so we go for Vande Bharat trains. Also, the most important routes will be covered, should be covered first with the bullet trains. Eventually, in the next 50 years, maybe all trains should be bullet trains. Maybe, yeah, 50 years. So right now, the Mumbai, I think right now they're constructing a Mumbai Ahmedabad link, yeah, bullet train link. Eventually, we should connect that with Delhi, maybe Mumbai to Bangalore, Bangalore, Mumbai to Chennai, Chennai to Kolkata, whatever the main cities, let's say the top 10 cities, those should be interconnected eventually first through bullet trains. The other routes should be improved slowly, gradually. More Vande Bharat expresses and local trains also slowly should improve them. But maybe the aim should be that in the next 50 years, most of this should be replaced by bullet trains. Next 50 years, it's not too much to think of it that way. 50 years. So that's the kind of thinking we need to have. So it's not like we need to prioritize only one thing first, and only when you perfect that will you go to the next step. No, do everything in parallel. That's how you will develop lots of different kinds of capabilities at the same time. That's what needs to happen. All right. Sharma is big. Yes, sir. Sharma is big. The Chinese have a deity called the Monkey King, which is their version of Lord Hanuman. How did they come to start revering him? Did Lord Hanuman ever visit China? And how else has Sanatan Dharma influenced them? Look, Lord Hanuman clearly was a historical figure. The Ramayana is a historical event. This happened before the Mahabharata. And we could tentatively date the Ramayana to, I don't know, several thousand years before today. We know that there are mentions of the river Saraswati in the Ramayana. The Saraswati is a great, powerful river in the time of the Ramayana. It's depicted like that. It's not depicted as a river that's drying out. Yeah. And the river started drying out after 6000 BC. That is 8000 years before today. And it dried out mostly uh, by about 1500 BC. That's 3,500 years before today. So the Ramayana would have happened closer to 8000 BC than to 1500 BC. That's how I see it. There will be people who disagree and people who have all these dates. I am not going into that controversy. That's not my concern right now. So the Ramayana most likely happened closer to 8000 BC. Was there any China in 8000 BC? Simple question. China is about 3000 years old. Chinese civilization is about 3000, 3,500 years old, if you want to be nice to them. Yeah, that's it. And why would Lord Hanuman ever visit China? I mean, there is no evidence of him having done that. And China did not even exist as a culture and a civilization at the time of the Ramayana. Therefore, there is no connection that way between Lord Hanuman and China. All right. Now the question is the Monkey King, right? What do the Chinese call the Monkey King? They have novels in which he's a major character. I think he is called Sun Wukong or something. Let's Google this. Let us Google it, right? Uh, so the Chinese have. All right, one second. So the Chinese have this deity, which is very clearly a influenced by Lord Hanuman. Chinese Monkey King, Sun Wukong, I believe it's called. Wukong. Okay, let's go to Wikipedia. As always, let me remind you that Wikipedia is not necessarily a reliable source of information, especially when it comes to Indian culture and history. But I'm just taking a cursory look at this. So the Monkey King, yes, Sun Wukong in Mandarin Chinese, is a legendary mythical figure. Best known as the main characters in the 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West. Yes, Journey to the West is a novel that essentially is the story of the Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang, who traveled to India and it's the story of his travels and the adventures he had, the hardships he faced while traveling across the mountains in Central Asia and all that. And Xuanzang essentially came to India to gain knowledge, to gain great Indian knowledge. The various Buddhist sutras and other sutras that he took back to China, translated into Chinese from Sanskrit and all that. The Chinese, obviously, we know they called India um, Tianzhu, the center of heaven. They consider themselves to be the center of earth, the middle kingdom, but they considered India to be the center of heaven. And India's influence on China is at least 2000 years old, at least. Uh, and it's all been a one-way traffic of culture influences. India has absorbed no Chinese culture at all in the past 2000 years, but China has absorbed incredible, humongous amounts of Indian culture. Yeah. So one of these is Sun Wukong. So in this novel, what is it called? Journey to the West. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, is one of the main characters who helps Xuanzang in his journey to India. And I, so what does it say? The monkey has certain supernatural powers because of Taoist practices and amazing strength, and he's the king of all the other monkeys and things like that. Yeah. And there is speculation over here somewhere, I believe, that yeah, the Ramayana, right? The Monkey King was possibly influenced by the Hindu deity Ramayan, the monkey god, the Hindu deity Hanuman, the monkey god from Ramayan. It's not possibly, it's definitely. There is no other monkey god in the world, no other monkey king in the world. The original one is Hanuman. The Chinese have had 2000 years of Indian influence. So obviously this and obviously even the Chinese are a polytheistic culture. Some Chinese, I believe, they revered certain monkeys. Yeah, they considered certain monkeys, the gibbons or whatever, to be divinities or something. There is there have been some elements of revering monkeys as gods or divinities even in Chinese culture. It's been there, but the character of the Monkey King bears so much resemblance. The character of Sun Wukong bears so much resemblance to Hanuman that it can be no other. Uh, so that's what it is. So the Monkey King, the Sun Wukong, is essentially a Chinese uh, representation of Lord Hanuman. It's inspired from Lord Hanuman, and yeah, it's one of the divinities in Chinese culture and religion. Sanatan Dharma has influenced the Chinese immensely, mostly via Buddhism. Buddhism is part of Sanatan Dharma, by the way. And I'm sure that people will come and say, no, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. It is what it is. You may like to disagree, it's your choice. But so the Chinese, and it's not just Buddhist divinities that you see in China. You see all the various Hindu divinities also in China. There have been Hindu temples in China. And the Chinese transmitted the same culture or eastwards to Japan. And in Japan, you have every single Hindu god and goddess, gods and goddesses that are classified today as Hindu gods and goddesses, not Buddhist gods and goddesses. Benzaiten in Japan is Saraswati, and then Lakshmi is there, Lord Mahakal is there, Lord Shiva is there, which is the same thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's had in an immense amount of influence on China, on Eastern Asia, on Japan, on Korea, and Southeast Asia. It's a whole different story. So yeah, it's been there, right? Om says, can India use the G20 summit to promote tourism and change India's image worldwide? So those are two different things. And there is some overlap. Tourism and changing India's image worldwide, there is some overlap between these two things. So I am participating in this in the S20 component of the G20 thing at this month end, the inaugural meeting of the S20 event. It's in Puducherry, and one of the days is entirely devoted to tourism, because tourism is has been made an integral part of all these events, of all the G20 events that are going to be held in India this year. I think it's a G20 policy. Yeah. So tourism is going to be an integral part of this. So if the meeting is 2 days or 3 days, one day is entirely devoted to traveling around the local place, which will be Puducherry in my case this month end, and all the foreign delegates will get to see whatever the Puducherry has to offer. The local sites and attractions, the local culture, the local cuisine, and all that. and there are going to be events all across India, in the northeast of India, in uh, in Bhopal, in Lakshadweep, in all the parts of India, in Ladakh, in Jammu and Kashmir as well. Yeah, lots and lots of events over the entire year of India's presidency, and tourism is going to be an integral part of that. So it's definitely going to give an enormous amount of exposure uh, of to foreign delegates uh, to India. Yeah. So they're going to get a great amount of exposure to Indian culture, to Indian history, Indian architecture, and all these things, which is good for India. Now, how do we change India's image worldwide? We have to put our best foot forward in whatever meetings whatever events are being organized in India. We have to showcase our strengths, our achievements, our talent, uh, the wonderful young people that we have, what abilities they have, what potential they have, what we have achieved, what we are working on, various Indian institutes of whatever, whether it is in the field of culture, whether it's in the field of science, whether it's in administration, whether it's in governance, uh, whether it's in science and technology, whether it's in industry. We have to showcase all of this, and that's what the government is going to do. Yes. So we need to put our best foot forward, and clearly the government has appointed the right leaders in all the various things, and that's what we're going to do. So it's going to be a great opportunity this entire year to showcase what our achievements are, what our beautiful nation is like. Yeah. What our potential is, what our capabilities are, and it's 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 a great opportunity for us to use this year to to become even better, you know raise our standards, like I keep saying. So yeah, the G20 summit is definitely going to be something that will do all these things. Yeah. Swapnil says, can you explain the concept of first principles thinking in science and philosophy, and how can we apply it in our day to day life? Well, I'm not sure about philosophy. I mean, I'm no expert in philosophy. I'm not a philosopher, as far as I know. Huh? So the concept of first principles thinking is something that I understand is from science, as far as I know. Yeah. First principles thinking, foundational principles thinking, it's about a certain kind of thinking process. It's about a certain kind of process of reasoning. How do you construct your reasoning? Most of us, we reason, or we think about things in a very specific, narrow manner. Yeah. um, we have this dogmatic kind of thinking. People, there is a certain accepted version of the truth, and we just believe it. We don't ever question it. Yeah. First principles thinking is about questioning everything at all. So for instance, let me give you a few examples. Let me give you an example from science. For instance, why do crystals, let's talk about science first, then I will give you examples of other things as well. So in science, you have crystals, crystals, quartz crystals, diamonds. We all know what a diamond looks like, I guess. Yeah. So the question is, why are diamonds the way they are, or why are crystals where they are? Why do they have these specific shapes? Why do they always come in a certain kind of shape? Quartz crystals always take a certain kind of shape. Diamonds always come in a certain kind of shape. Why is it that way? Why do they have these properties? So then you ask yourself, why? Why is it like this? Why is this angle there, or this thing and all? So then you will start realizing. So then you have to think from a foundational perspective, from the foundational uh, principles of physics. So, what laws of physics apply to crystals? And then you will realize that none of the Newtonian laws of physics apply to crystals. Then you will realize, if you go dig deeper into it, that a crystal is a macroscopic quantum bound state. It's a purely quantum object. It's a giant molecule. That's what a crystal is, and its properties depend on what the crystal is made of. So in case of diamond, it's a tetrahedral carbon crystal. Yeah, one carbon atom attached to four different carbon atoms and all that, which gives it this incredible strength, hardness, and all that. So that's how you think in terms of the foundational principles, the concepts of physics, the first principles of physics and mathematics. Now, let's apply it to something else. Let's say you have a kid and you tell the kid, okay beta, it's 9 o'clock in the night, let's go to sleep. And the kid will say, why should I go to sleep? Kids are really good at thinking from first principles, because they keep asking why. And most parents will say, no, it's why, because I tell you so. I said so, that's why. That's not how it works. So then you force the child to accept dogmatic thinking instead of answering the question of why. If a child asks you, why should I sleep at 9, you have to tell them that you need to sleep at a certain time and wake up at a certain time to have a healthy circadian cycle. The body, the brain, has something called a circadian cycle, and it needs to be maintained regularly at a, the sleep wake cycle. So the first thing when you wake up is that you need to see the sunlight. You need to have sunlight on your skin, maybe indirectly in your eyes, that transforms the that gives certain chemical signals to the brain, and then it gives you about 14-15 hours of waking time, and then you sleep again. You have to have a regular routine of that. So that's why you have to sleep at 9, yeah, or whatever time. And because you're a kid, you need more sleep than adults. That's why you have to explain it properly. And also then the child will say, but what if I don't sleep? Why should I sleep? Then you have to explain why sleep is necessary. If you don't sleep, then you're gonna be your brain will not function properly. Why will the brain not function properly is the next question. So you have to go deeper and deeper into it, and break it down to the first principle, the foundations. Yeah, why do you need sleep? And that's a question that's not really been answered in medicine, but that's how it is. So you have to keep asking why. What exactly you have to start with the question of what exactly do I think. Then you have to ask yourself, why do I think this, and how do I know this is true, and what if this is not true? Yeah, so keep asking why. I think there is this principle of asking why 5 times. Why. You ask a question why, you get an answer. Then you ask why that, then you get a different answer. Then you ask why that, then you get a different answer. And it's all, you can apply this to business, you can apply this to engineering, you can apply this to history. I always keep talking about causality and the causal chain. It's not enough to study history from the perspective of memorizing dates, because that tells you nothing. You have to think of history as a causal chain. Why did this happen? Why did Genghis Khan refuse to invade India? Yes, that is an example of first principles thinking. It's the video with the most views on this channel. That's where I applied first principles thinking. Genghis Khan did not leave behind a diary or a memoir or a record in which he explains his behavior. He has left behind nothing. So we only have the data of what he did in his life. And then we have to apply first principles of human psychology and the laws of power and geostrategy, and try to figure out why he did something. Why? So that's how I was able to deconstruct why he refused to invade India. Because you have to go through his entire life history, all the decisions he took, to understand the thinking patterns and the behavioral patterns he had, the decision making patterns he had. Then you understand what his motivations are, what his psychology is, and then you can understand. Then you use that and apply it to his decision of the question that he had: should I invade or not? And when you understand the pattern and the thought process and the psychology, then you will understand why he did not invade India. It's all about first principles thinking. You think this way, you will have a much better chance at success in the various endeavors you are in life. If you think of, if you have the different thought process, the dogmatic thinking, that you just think what everybody else wants you to think, the accepted wisdom, then there will never be any human progress. For instance, when I was a kid, not when I was a kid, when I was in college and all, I always used to eat an ice cream when I had a cough or a cold. Now this goes against all accepted wisdom. We know that if you are someone who is accustomed to living in a warm place, and you go to a cold place, let's say you go to Ladakh in winter, where right now it will be minus 10 degrees in Leh or something, minus 10, minus 15 degrees. Yeah, your nose is going to run, you're going to get a cough and cold and all that. So cough and cold are caused by nose running and all, are indeed caused by very cold weather, atmospheric conditions. Yes, and of course the altitude is also there, but it doesn't mean that it's caused by eating cold things. And it also doesn't mean that if you eat cold things, it's going to make your cough or cold worse. Yeah, if it was so, then the people who live in cold places, they would have a miserable life every time they had a cough or a cold, but it's not the case. Yeah. So I always found, I tried this out. I'm an experimenter in some things. Yeah. um, I like to question things because of the first principles thinking, which I think it's not something because of my scientific training. It's something that I've always had. So whenever I had a cough or a cold, I would eat an ice cream, and see if it makes things worse. It never made anything worse. Maybe it's only specific to me. Maybe for some other people, it makes things worse. And of course, if you believe that if you do something and it's going to make your life worse, it will happen. Yeah. So it's about that. But if you so it's about being doing things that are against accepted wisdom only after you think it through properly. You could call it scientific thinking, you could call it first principles thinking, foundational principles thinking, whatever it is. It's all about questioning. It's all about being clearly analyzing things. What do I think? Why do I think this? How do I know it is true? How do I know this is not true? What if I did this and what happens? And you try to break it down to the first principles, the foundational principles. And that's how it is. So I think Elon Musk has spoken about this. That's why it's become very famous these days. What is first principles thinking and all that? Yeah. So that's the deal. That's what I could offer you in brief. Daniel Nicholson says, okay, let's apply first principles thinking to this. Daniel Nicholson says, why are Andhra Pradesh and Odisha so prone to cyclonic storms? How would the global climate change climate how would the global climatic change affect the decrease in cyclone frequency in our eastern seaboard? Let us put the map on the screen because we are talking about, yeah, here's the map. Where's the map? Here's the map. So, and it's not only about the east coast of India. See, some of the most terrible cyclonic storms have in the past have occurred in Bangladesh, in Bengal. So it's the entire eastern coast of India, even Tamil Nadu, etc., even Sri Lanka. Typically, it's the eastern coast of India that bears the brunt of these regular cyclonic storms that occur in the Sea of Kalinga. Yeah, and it's not only there. You will see that there is something called a hurricane season in the US. It's always on the east coast. It's typically on the east coast, mostly often in the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, typically the southern states of the US are hit repeatedly every year, and that's how it is. So the question is, then you have to apply first principles thinking. I'm doing this in real time now. Yeah, I've not thought this through. You have something called the atmosphere on our planet. The planet has a magnetic field. The planet rotates around its own axis. It goes around the sun. It not in a circular orbit, but in an elliptical orbit. And the axis of the rotation is tilted. It's not straight with respect to the plane of the elliptic, the plane of the solar system. So you have seasons on the planet because of this tilt of the axis. So at any given point in time, either the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere is hotter, and obviously the side of the earth that is facing the sun at any given point in time is going to be warmer. Because of these differences in temperature, you have currents in the atmosphere and currents in the oceans of the world. In the oceans, there are currents. In Japan, you have the Japanese current, which is called the Kuroshio current. In the Atlantic, you have what's called the Gulf Stream that also passes impacts or affects Britain, the United Kingdom. Yeah, see, the UK is at the same latitude as Newfoundland, where you have polar bears. Newfoundland is incredibly cold. You have polar bears there. The UK is at the same latitude, but it's much warmer. Why is that? It's because of the Gulf Stream, the ocean current, which is a warm current in the cold Atlantic. So because of the various phenomena that are caused by the Earth's tilt, by the seasons, by the day and night boundary and all that, and by the rotation of the Earth around the sun, we have these various uh, atmospheric and meteorological phenomena on our planet. So there is something called the equator, where the temperature remains more or less the same. There's a lot of rain there, and there are these various ocean currents, and there are various what they call trade winds. And these trade winds, they change direction every 6 months or so. Yeah. So these winds also they reverse direction and all. And in India, we have the monsoon season, which is also a periodic thing. It's a seasonal thing. Yeah. So all weather on a large, if you look at weather from a day-to-day basis, the change of weather on a day-to-day basis, you will get confused. But if you look at it from a year-to-year perspective, you will see these patterns of weather. These recurring patterns that you see in weather, in climate, all across the planet. And you can actually kind of predict that if you have the right amount of data. So on the basis of all these things, you have certain phenomena which also depend on geography. Yeah. So over here in Indonesia, we have these islands that lie on the equator, and there are these tremendous tropical storms that happen all the time. South of India, there are no islands. So the weather over here along the equator is very different. The climate in the weather is very different along the Indonesian islands. Then let's see in the Maldives, where the islands are very insignificant, very small. So the weather in Indonesia is very different from that of the Maldives. And this region, Indonesia, etc., it's quite close to the Sea of Kalinga, so-called Bay of Bengal. And maybe, so I'm saying maybe, okay, I don't have the answers because I'm just thinking of about this from first principles. So you have the warm air down here, and you have cooler air here, and you have the monsoon, and you have the tropical climate, seasonal climate. So maybe it is the interaction of the Indian monsoon, the moisture laden clouds, and the cooler temperatures they bring, along with the hotter air and the air currents of the equatorial region, that lead to these churning cyclonic storms that are spawned in the Indian monsoon repeatedly. There's at least one cyclonic storm every year, typically in the monsoon season, but also at other times also sometimes. Yeah. And a similar process most likely happens in the eastern Atlantic seaboard of the US, where you have these repeated hurricanes that hammer, that batter the east coast of the US multiple times every year. That's also seasonal. So all weather on a macroscopic scale, large scale, is seasonal, and you can predict that these few months a certain kind of weather is going to be visible. So it's because of these cyclonic storms that batter the eastern coast of India, that this phenomenon is because of the cyclic nature of the atmosphere, of the weather. And it all, the foundational principles and the reasons, the root cause of that is the tilt of the Earth's rotational axis with respect to the plane of the solar system. It's because of the day night boundary. So one side is cooler, one side is hotter, and also because of the seasons. So all of that causes weather, and weather that is cyclical in nature. And that's why you have a storm season, a cyclone season in eastern India, and a hurricane season in the US. And there will be such other patterns in all parts of the world. There is the El Nino and El Nina phenomena also that happen in a cyclical manner every few years. And you have the Indian monsoon, which also is a yearly phenomenon. So that's the first principles thinking that you can apply to this question. Okay, Chinmay Sarpotdar says, I want to ask you three questions. Okay, let's take one. I'll take one question. Let's take the first question. What's the first question? If a living organism is also ultimately made of atoms, and all non-living things are also made of atoms, like these books, everything else, then what exactly makes a living being living? What exactly is life then? Yes, everything is made of atoms. Yeah. We are made of atoms. The metal here is made of atoms. The wood, the books, which is all that. This thing here is, everything is atoms. My clothes, all atoms. Yeah. So the question you're asking is, what exactly differentiates life, living organisms, from non-living material, non-living substances? So there are several characteristics that are common to all living organisms. Firstly, they're made of cells. You take a microscope and you take, let's say, blood sample or whatever, you put it in a slide, you mount it in a microscope, put the light on, and you go deep into it, you will see cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, other cells. Human tissue is made of cells. There are fat cells, there are muscle cells, and all kinds of other cells, right? Skin cells, and there are specialized cells, and so on. So all living organisms are made of cells. Those cells obviously are made up of proteins and other things, and deep inside you have atoms. Yeah. So atoms are at the foundation of everything in the 4% universe that we see. Yeah. These atoms, they give rise to molecules. These molecules give rise to various chemical substances. The chemical substances are what make up life. The carbon chemistry that we are carbon creatures, or carbon based life forms. So all living beings are made up of cells. You will not find any living being that doesn't have a cell. Yeah. So cells are the basic unit of life. Now, all living beings have either DNA or RNA. Take viruses. You have RNA viruses, you have DNA viruses. The most infamous RNA virus of these days is, you know what? You know what? So, all living beings are made of cells. All living beings have DNA or RNA. Living beings can grow and develop, they can reproduce and pass on their genetic information to their offspring. Non-living beings, non-living materials can't do this. Yeah. And living beings can regulate their internal environment. We human beings all have a certain temperature, 98 point whatever degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, you go above that, it's a fever and then things are not well. So in your normal healthy state, you are able to regulate your internal temperature and all the internal subsystems, systems and subsystems that make up your body. And this is something that applies to all living beings. They can regulate their internal environment and they respond to external stimuli. And living beings evolve. Like I said, they can pass on their genetic information to their offspring, and this happens over generations, generation after generation. And eventually there is evolution. Living beings evolve, and there is natural selection, survival of the fittest in their environment, right? So that's the deal. These are some of the characteristics of living beings. Now, when I spoke about viruses. Viruses are curious creatures. They are kind of on the boundary between living and non-living, living and dead. Yeah. So they don't regulate their internal environment. They can't do that. And viruses don't even respond to stimuli. Mostly they don't respond to stimuli. Yeah. But they do have DNA or RNA. They do have a cell membrane, cell structure. They do reproduce and pass on genetic information to their offspring, and they do evolve. They do mutate and evolve. We know they evolve enough. So yeah, viruses are they're like crystals in a sense. They of course have proteins and all that. Yep. And they have DNA or RNA. So viruses are on the dividing boundary kind of between living and non-living. But the fact that they have DNA or RNA, in my opinion, makes them living beings. Yeah. So these are the characteristics of living organisms. We are living organisms. Our dog, our cat, our bird, pets, whatever, uh, and whatever else we see, trees, all living organisms, they all share these characteristics. Even plants respond to external stimuli. Maybe not in the sense that we do, but they do. You see, uh, if you see what do they call it? What do they call it? That video in which you speed time up. I forgot the term. You see those videos in which the time is speeded up, and you see the behavior of a plant in, let's say, 60 seconds. What it does in 3 days, then you will see that it responds to stimuli. You put a light on, it's going to turn in the direction to get more light, and so that it can enhance the photosynthesis. In the nighttime, the leaves, they droop down and they close, and that sort of thing. If you see a time lapse of a forest from above, you will see that the trees, they shift their positions multiple times in a day, and they all try to stay away from their neighbors and keep some space in between. So even plants respond to their external environments and all that. So that's essentially the difference between living and non-living, even though everything is made up of atoms. All right. um Daniel Nicholson says, "Do elephants have superior intelligence compared to other animals, given the sizes of their heads vis-a-vis the thorax and abdomen? Could elephants eventually evolve into a civilized species like humans if we don't intervene from outside? Are we a civilized species?" uh, okay, you may. Okay, I know what you're asking. Yeah. So elephants, they have enormous heads. Yeah. Let's talk about not head size but brain size. So the human brain, I think, on average is about 1.3, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 kilos. Let's say 1.3 kilos, the average weight of the human brain. When it comes to the elephant, the average weight, I believe, is 5 kilos, almost four times the size of a human brain, roughly. So elephants have massive, enormous brains compared to humans. If you compare that with the gorilla, excuse me, gorillas, they have brains that are roughly half a kilo in weight. Our chimpanzee cousins, who are Gorillas and chimpanzees are very closely related to us. Gorillas are half a kilo. Chimpanzees are about 0.4 kilos, 400 grams. The brain, quite small. When it comes to dolphins, aquatic creatures, dolphins have slightly larger brains than humans, 1.6 kilos, I think, the dolphin. When it comes to orcas, the killer whales, which don't ever hurt humans, their brains weigh about 7 kilos, even larger than elephants. Yeah. And the sperm whale, it has the largest brain that we know of. It's about 9 kilos. 9 kilos. That's enormous. And you see, all these species, they are very highly intelligent. Now, they may not be intelligent in the same way as us, but they are highly social. We know that they are playful. They when it comes to, let's say, orcas, the killer whales, we know that they cooperate in hunts. They pass on hunting techniques, complex and sophisticated hunting techniques, to their children. They train them repeatedly. It's like a training course of a few weeks on how to perfect a certain cooperative hunting technique, very sophisticated hunting techniques. So orcas are highly intelligent. They communicate. They are known to communicate with human beings. So can dolphins. Sperm whales also, they have enormous brains, and they are very intelligent. They have very social uh, lives, very complex social lives. When it comes to elephants are incredibly intelligent. They I don't know, they clearly have emotions. They mourn their dead. They revisit the place where their ancestors died, year after year after year, for decades. They have very long lasting memories. Yeah. Elephants are very intelligent. They also have strong emotions. Elephants, believe me, elephants have strong emotions. Emotions like compassion, emotions like love, emotions like anger. Good God, elephants can get angry. And the same thing you will see in our primate relatives, the gorillas and the chimpanzees. So I don't know if elephants have superior intelligence compared to some other creatures. Maybe they do. Definitely, an elephant would have a superior intelligence compared to, let's say, a squirrel. That's what it looks like. Um, and when it comes to evolution, whether they will evolve into, let's say, civilized species, I think in some ways elephants are very civilized already. Um, so So, will they evolve into a different kind of species? Evolution is a constant, never-ending process, but it doesn't happen over a course of weeks or months. It takes typically hundreds of thousands of years for evolution to change the way a species appears and behaves. Uh, the oldest evidence that we have of anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens, was found in a cave in North Africa, Jebel Irhoud, I believe, in Algeria. Uh, these specimens of Homo sapiens fossils are about 300,000 years old, 3 lakh years old. They are anatomically like us, but there are certain differences. Yeah, like the brow is much heavier, much larger. If you see chimpanzees or gorillas, they've got very big brows over here, a big ridge over here. So the Jebel Irhoud Homo sapiens have slightly larger brow bones, or whatever it is, the brow ridge and all. So there are certain differences that you find in the humans that were alive 3 lakh years before today, and yet they were anatomically more or less just like us. They were Homo sapiens, the same species as us. So Homo sapiens has not evolved much in 3 lakh years. And if you look at the history of humanity overall, um, uh, the human chimpanzee split happened about 2 million years before today. So that's like um, that is like 20 lakh years, in terms of lakhs and crores. So typically, it takes about half a million years, about 5 lakh years, for significant evolutionary changes to become visible, apparent. So if you wait for another 5 lakh years, I'm sure elephants will look different. They may have evolved in a different way. So evolution is something that is essentially about adaptation long term to environmental changes. And obviously, you want to keep on increasing your chances of survival in whatever changing environment you live in. And that's something that takes a lot of time, like I said, hundreds of thousands of years. So eventually elephants will evolve into something else. And in the past, if we only have to look at the past history of elephants, elephants in if you look at the deep ancestry of elephants, then their ancestors, maybe like several tens of millions of years ago, were dog-like creatures. If you look at the ancestors of whales, The ancestors of whales were dog or bear-like creatures that lived on land, and then over millions of years they adapted to start living in oceans. So this is a process that takes a very long time, minimum half a million years, typically tens of millions of years. So eventually elephants will evolve into something else. Eventually we will evolve into something else if we hang around that long. Yeah. We have been around for a very long time, humans. Our ancestors survived the Chicxulub impact event of 66 million years ago, which killed off the non-avian dinosaurs. The avian dinosaurs are still around. I see them every day. So yeah, okay. Samarth Gandhi says, do dogs understand human language to some extent? And how do dogs process television? Dogs do understand human language. Certain dogs breeds, not species. Certain dog breeds are very intelligent. The Indian dog is a very intelligent breed of dogs. Yeah, it's one of the oldest breed of dogs, maybe the oldest breed of dogs. It's the Indian so-called pariah dog. Yeah. So dogs are very intelligent, as we know. They are man's best friend, human being's best friend, and they do understand human language. They don't understand all the nuances and all that, the details, but they understand basic conversation. If two people are talking, if you have a dog who is a pet and he or she has grown up with you, and you and your family members talk, they will understand most of it. They will not understand deeply philosophical topics or complicated things like that, politics and geopolitics and things like that. But regular basic conversation, let's go shopping, let's go to the park, what shall we eat, shall we eat this, I'm angry, I'm happy, all that stuff they will understand. You tell your dog, okay, you go out of the window, you go out of the door and sit outside for 5 minutes. They may not understand what 5 minutes means, but they will certainly go and sit outside, and they will do what you tell them to do, if they are, well, if they are so inclined. So dogs understand more than we believe they do. They understand human language. You will see dogs throwing tantrums and arguing, and I don't want this, I want that, all that. Cats also understand a lot, but of course, cats pretend not to understand anything. Cats also understand a lot, but cats are a very different kind of creature. They're also they're the two major pets that we have, the species that we are the most closely allied with, are dogs and cats, and they're very different. Yeah. So cats also actually understand human language, but they pretend not to. They pretend not to pay attention, because that's how they are. That's what cats do. We own dogs, but cats own us. That's how it is. Now, how do dogs process television? In the past, you had those cathode ray tube televisions, those box TVs, right? Um, in the box TV, you have an electron gun that paints a picture on the screen, line by line, and it happens at, I don't know how many frames per second, 24 frames per second or whatever. It's a line by line thing. Yeah. So I believe dogs could not see that. Even cats could not see that properly. They would only see the line coming out. But today we have LCD, LED, LCD, whatever it is, the technology. That is something dogs and cats can see just as well as us. Because you will see dogs watching TV. You even see cats watching TV and watching movies and reacting to things. When there's a horror movie, they'll react, they'll show fear, and they'll run off, whatever. So when it comes to the new technology that we have, the LED or LCD, LED, I believe, the dogs and cats can see it just as well as us. Yeah, the same thing. They see color differently from us, and they see certain frequencies of light, spectra, or certain wavelengths of light that we can't see. So maybe that is something that's missing in the LED images that we use for our convenience. So they may find the image to be kind of weird from their perspective, because it doesn't show things in those wavelengths, possibly. But it is well known that dogs and cats are known to watch TV and actually get engrossed in things. So that's how it is. Yeah. Renegan says, did Chinese teach Manipuris how to make bricks? Is Meitei Mayek a combination of Lai and Mee language? See, Meitei Mayek is not a language, it is a script. Yes, it is the script that is used to write the Manipuri language. In the past, because of historical events, the Manipuri language was written in the Bengali script. So you go back to people who studied in school 30 years ago, they would be more familiar and more comfortable with the Bengali script. You go to Manipur today, all the kids, they are taught to write and read in the news in the actually the original script, the Meitei Mayek script, which has been reconstructed of late. Uh, so Meitei Mayek is a script; it is not a language. Now, the Manipuri language is classified as a Tibeto-Burman language, which means uh, it has characteristics that are similar to the Tibetan language, and also it has characteristics that are similar to the Burmese language. So that's a whole spectrum of languages. Let's put the map on the screen. Map. Yeah, map. Where's Manipur? Manipur is here in the far east of India, south of Nagaland, north of Mizoram, east of Myanmar, west of Meghalaya and Assam. Yeah, um, west of Assam, Silchar, etc. is very close actually to Imphal and all that. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of languages which are the Tibeto-Burman languages, which are spoken in Burma, in the far east of in the so-called northeast of India, and in Tibet. And Tibet is classified as a Sino-Tibetan language. Why does Sino have to come in there? But whatever. The linguists, they have made a whole mess of the entire science of linguistics. Linguistics should have been a science. They've turned it into a joke. Uh, it was a science in the days of Acharya Panini. Yeah, he is the father of linguistics. At that time, it was a science. Now it's a joke. So anyhow, but it is indeed true that the Meitei language, Manipuri language, has characteristics of Tibetan. For instance, in the Tibetan language, a place is called La, like Shangri-La. We know Shangri-La. La means place. In Manipuri also, La means place. Uh, for instance, Kangla, a dry place, that sort of thing. So, so the Manipuri language, the Meitei language, is a Tibeto-Burman language. I'm not sure what if any connection it has with the Lai and the Mee language, right? Now, about the Chinese teaching Manipuris how to make bricks. So that I believe it comes from the story of Khagemba. There was a Manipuri king. Let's put that on the screen now. Uh, let's go here. Okay, I'm going to read Wikipedia once again. Don't ever trust Wikipedia. I'm just putting it for reference. There was a Manipuri king called Khagemba. He was called the conqueror of the Chinese. I believe he would have conquered some territory in Yunnan, which some people would say is part of China. Currently, it's part of China. So he conquered some territory in Yunnan, and he is called the conqueror of China. He ruled between 1597 and 1654. Um, let's put a map on the screen. So Manipur, as you see, is over here. Yeah, Tungu is the Burmese kingdom. The Ming dynasty at that time, it appears was uh, it had a boundary with the kingdom of Manipur, and it looks and we know that King Khagemba did conquer some territory that was part of the Chinese Ming Empire at the time. So he is called the conqueror of the Chinese, and he brought back several prisoners of war into Manipur. And the story goes that these Chinese prisoners of war taught the Manipuris how to make bricks, which I think is quite laughable. Yeah. Why do I say this? Okay, let's go back to the map. I say this for a certain precise reason. Let's go to the map once again, and I'll show you why I say this. So you go to Manipur, the major city in the valley region is Imphal, the capital of Manipur. You go into Imphal, you zoom in, there is a place called the Kangla Fort, which is essentially the heart of Manipur. That's where Manipur as a culture, as a civilization, is said to have emerged. The Kangla Fort. Yeah, there is a gate over here. There's a moat around the place. There is the Kangla Fort, and then there is a Govindaji temple inside, and there is also an archaeological site where more archaeological work is being done. I don't remember where it is. Somewhere around here, there are excavations happening inside the Kangla port. I believe the ASI would be involved. There are significant portions of the Kangla fort that still remain underground, that are not excavated. They have not been researched at all. Some of the excavation work is still going on. If you go there, you will see that some of it is underground, some of it is overground, some of it is half exposed to the sun, and so on. And you go and look into it, you will find bricks. The Kangla fort is around 2000 years old at least, maybe older than that. So there were bricks, all right, in the Kangla fort. I think if you're in Manipur, you can go and see it for yourself. So this entire story of the Chinese teaching Manipuris how to make bricks. Are you kidding me? I don't know how such stories come into the popular imagination. But yeah, it's a myth. It's nonsense. All right. Hmm. Khusro Anushirvan says, okay, 4 questions. Let's take the first question. I always take the first question. What's your favorite samurai of all time? My favorite samurai of all time. There were lots of great samurai leaders and so on. If you want me to pick one, I would pick the great Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi. Miyamoto Musashi. So Miyamoto Musashi was a great samurai, great swordsman. He wrote this great book, the Book of Five Rings. I would recommend you all read this. People talk about the Art of War, which was written by Sun Tzu. Well, I would say you should read the Book of Five Rings, which is written by Miyamoto Musashi. Yep. The book is mainly about kenjutsu, swordsmanship. Yeah, how to wield a sword. So Miyamoto Musashi was a samurai. Who were the samurais? They were the Japanese warrior class. You could call them the Kshatriyas of Japan. Yeah, very very strict principles, very strict regimented life. They ruled Japan more or less for close to 1,000 years. Yeah, they had this way of life called Bushido, the way of the warrior. Yeah, and Musashi was one of the great samurai and a great writer. He wrote this Book of Five Rings. It's about swordsmanship. It's about martial arts, but it's also about life. It's also a book about life through swordsmanship and martial arts. It's divided into, like it says, Book of Five Rings. It's divided into 5 sections: earth, water, fire, wind, and the void. The void. So I will not go into what the book is about, what the details are, but if you want me to name my favorite samurai, I would say Miyamoto Musashi, and I would recommend, if you are so inclined, do read his book, The Book of Five Rings. Great book. Knowledge Seeker says, what would be the mindset of the great leaders when they lost or it seemed like they would lose? Let me quote Miyamoto Musashi: to win any battle, you must fight as if you are already dead. Which means you must commit fully to the cause. And a leader, a great leader, would be fully committed to the cause, whatever the cause is. And in any leader's life, in any person's life, there will be times when you are close to failure. And you may even fail. We talk about Genghis Khan. He never lost a single military campaign, but he lost several battles. And at times things would have looked bleak for him. But he always found a way to come out, to succeed at the end. It doesn't matter if you lose a couple of battles here and there, but you must win the military campaign. You participate in the World Cup for cricket or football. It's okay to lose a match or two, but the overall game, the goal has to be achieved. So the mindset is you never give up. First of all, a great leader, it doesn't become a great leader just by not giving up. There are other qualities that a great leader must have. If you have those qualities, you never give up. It's do or die. You are fully committed, and to win a battle, you must fight as if you are already dead, which means that you have nothing to lose. If I die, if I lose, it's fine. I don't care. But I'm going to do my best. And leadership, like I've said in the past, is service. You don't A leader is not a selfish person. You don't fight for yourself. You don't have ulterior motives. You don't have conflicts of interest. You are fully committed to one cause, that is the cause of serving your nation, your people, whatever it is, whoever you're leading. You cannot lead the whole world. You have to have a specific limited constituency of people whom you lead. Yeah. So that's how it is. Leadership is about service, and to win any battle, you must fight as if you are already dead. And a leader who is completely committed will say, it's okay. We're gonna, no matter what happens, we're gonna keep on going. We're gonna fight till the end, and obviously that's how it goes. So that's the mindset of great leaders. Lots of great leaders have come close to failure. Some have even failed, but then emerged again and then won. That's how it goes. Rodrajit Sarkar says, who are your who are your favorite fictional detectives? Mine are Feluda by Satyajit Roy and Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. Uh, yeah, I have indeed read Sherlock Holmes. I've seen some of the series, the old series, and all that. great detective, great fictional detective, maybe the greatest fictional detective of all time, Sherlock Holmes. You ask me, I will give you strange names. uh, I don't have one single favorite fictional detective. The names that come to mind are, for instance, Thompson and Thompson. Thompson and Thompson, the two detectives from the Tintin comics. Yeah, that's one. I can think of some names you may not know of. David Addison from Moonlighting, portrayed by Bruce Willis. Yeah, Remington Steele, portrayed by Pierce Brosnan. Inspector Clouseau, portrayed by Peter Sellers in the Pink Panther series. Later on, he was portrayed by Steve Martin, which I did not enjoy at all. Yeah, so these are some of my favorite fictional detectives. Yes. Um, Giuseppe Di Fraia says human beings revert back to their primordial savage animalistic form, like misogyny, sexism, violence, killing, tribalism, debauchery, and unspeakable horrors. Why do it? Why does it happen? Why do humans revert to this? Well, first of all, we are indeed animals. There is something that sets us aside from animals, which is culture and civilization. But sometimes culture and civilization breaks down. In some societies, there is no, for whatever reason, there is war or whatever. There is no rule of law and order, and you are forced to fight with your fellow human beings for mere survival, for food and all. That's when you are left with no choice, and that should never happen, but unfortunately in the world it happens. So that's one reason. Yeah. In some societies, the culture itself is like that. I am not naming anybody, please, okay, let's not get into controversies. I'm not naming any society. In certain societies, the culture is such that certain things are allowed. Yeah. In the past, it may have been like that. Today also there may be some places, possibly somewhere. Yeah. So it's like that. But as long as you have a set of moral and ethical uh, values, and you are consistent to those values and principles, you're gonna live like a civilized human being and not like an animal. When those things break down, you go back to being an animal. Yeah. And of course, some people are incapable of being an animal, even if they don't, even if they are living in the wild. And some people are naturally predisposed to violence and all that. So in every society, you have some criminal elements and all. That's how it is. But overall, from a societal perspective, when a society is under great stress, when there is, let's say, foreign occupation, that's where your culture is no longer something you can control, and there are external cultural impositions on you, and those, that taint becomes part of your culture. And if you that's one possibility. And if you are a nation at war, and there are no resources available because of warfare, then you may be forced to fight for very small things like just food or water, and support your family. And the only way to do that is to fight your fellow human beings. That is horrible. That also happens. Yeah. So that's how it is. And of course, there is greed. Nations fight each other sometimes for territory. Look at Chinese expansionism, so on. So typically, this reverting to animalistic behavior is because of uh, a breakdown of culture and civilization. When that set of values and morals and ethics goes away, that's when some human beings can revert to such behavior, which is unfortunate. Yes. Let's take one more question. Sharma is big says, could you please interview the girl? Could you please interview the girl that played Jenny in RRR? And at the end, could you tell her that if she ever finds herself in Melbourne, Australia, I, Lakshya Sharma, can show her around for free. I'd highly appreciate this. Who's the girl who played that thing? Shall we Google it? Yeah, let's Google who's the girl that played the role of Jenny. Jenny. There was a Jenny in Forrest Gump, wasn't there? But this is a different Jenny. So let's go to this incognito tab. Let's go to imdb.com. Imdb.com. Boom. Go. And let's search for RRR. RRR. This movie. And let's see who that lady is. What is her name? I think this is the one, yeah? Jennifer, right? Jenny. Her name is Olivia Morris. Olivia Morris. She is from England, I believe. She's English. Let's see if one can trace her social media. Something. She has Instagram. Yeah. Let's see. Is any email available? This is okay. She has this photograph with this wonderful gentleman here. All right, that's an Instagram. She also has a Twitter. Yes. So okay, her name is not Jenny. Her name is Olivia Morris, and so on. So listen, I don't have anything in common with this lady, Olivia Morris. I'm not sure if I shall interview her. I typically don't interview actors and actresses. Uh, but you know what? If she's watching by any chance, or if somebody who knows her is watching, please let the lady know. Her name is Olivia Morris. Please let her know that there is this fine young gentleman called Laksha Sharma who will be happy if she ever finds herself in Melbourne to show her around for free. So please, if she's watching, please, if Olivia, you're watching, please know that. If somebody who knows her is watching, please convey it to her. If she's ever in Melbourne, she can meet Mr. Laksha Sharma. Will be happy to show her around for free. Yes. All right. Let's take some live chat questions for a few seconds. Yes. Sorry. What is that? What is that? Excuse me. There's not stalking. I'm doing some genuine research on because of a request. I'm not stalking anyone. Please. All right. All right. So what shall we see? Someone is saying I'm simping. Excuse me. I don't simp. Okay, you have any questions? You can ask me some questions. Uh, do you move your hand while reading to know the style of learning? So I'm reading and I'm moving my hand. I don't move my. Okay, some people they put their finger on the text they are reading and they read line by line. I don't do that. I think I absorb entire paragraphs at once. I don't know how I read it. I've never tried to analyze it. Um, I think I read paragraph by paragraph, not word by word. I read really fast. I think it's a kind of somewhat unusual the speed at which I read. But yeah. What else? How's the book Children of Memory? I haven't started it yet. I buy more books than I can read, and I have read more books than I have bought. I have I The book Children of Memory is a sequel, I believe, to a previous book which I have read, and which is brilliant, and that's why I bought the book Children of Memory. And there's a book called Children of Ruin as well. The first one is a book about spiders and humans. The second one I haven't read. The third one I haven't read, but the first one is brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Science fiction, of course. All right, let's take some other questions. I'm always having out of body dreams. Why is this happening? I'm scared to sleep. Please help someone. I think you should see a psychologist or psychiatrist or something. They can analyze dreams. They will ask you questions. They'll ask you about how you're feeling and how do you feel about these out of body dreams. What do you see in these out of body dreams? Do you go somewhere? Are you flying? Do you meet some people who are terrifying? Do you meet some supernatural beings? How do you feel about that? What is your reaction to that? So if it is really a problem for you, I don't think I'm the right person to ask. You should actually see a psychiatrist and work through the issues that may be the root cause behind these dreams. Dreams always, I believe, have some connection with real life, and they typically tell you something, and they indicate something about the state of mind that you are currently in, or whatever circumstances you're going through. Sometimes some people have a recurring dream. It may recur every night, or it may recur infrequently, like once a year or something, but when it comes back, you're like, oh wow, this came back, that sort of thing. And some people never have the same dream again. Some people always have a similar kind of dream, and some people have things like out of body dreams and all that. So yeah, if it is a problem, if it is scaring you, if it is affecting your life, you need to see a professional, maybe a psychiatrist, and go through the entire process, and they will help you um, address what this is really about. It's typically about some issues that you're facing in your actual life. Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis? I have not. Sleep paralysis is when you sleep and you become paralyzed, and you're awake but you can't move, and typically you feel some kind of supernatural presence in the room. Maybe some heavy weight on your chest, like some being is sitting on your chest, and it's a very frightful experience. That's what I've heard. I have personally never experienced it. um, some people experience it multiple times in their life. I'm not sure if everybody experiences this sort of thing, but yeah, I personally haven't experienced it. But it is a phenomenon that is known to uh, be reasonably common, and it's a phenomenon that's known to have existed mostly like throughout human history. There are even paintings of this thing. It's called a night terror or something, paintings by, I believe, European artists about a night terror. A person is sleeping and there's some demon or something sitting on their chest and that sort of thing. So yeah, I personally haven't experienced this. Okay. Quickest practical way for India to reach $15 trillion GDP. Focus on the economy, manufacturing, and export. That's the quickest and practical way. It's easier said than done, but it can happen. Next 20 years. Give yourself 20 years to reach $15 trillion. Why not? What will be the future of Canada, according to you? Or why so many these eye rolls? What's the future of Canada according to me? Recession or economic collapse? See, Canada is a huge, gigantic, ginormous, empty country, mostly frozen. The true owners, the custodian, the true owners of the land are the ones who are the most marginalized, the ones who have been genocided, the Native Americans. That's a whole different thing. Today, you have a fascist dictator running the country. Justin Trudeau, Monsieur Trudeau is running the country. I don't think anyone likes him, but they keep electing him, which is kind of weird, which kind of raises some questions. Anyway, the future of Canada. Canada is a US vassal state. Okay. And the future of Canada is intrinsically tied to the future of the US. Canada, of course, has no natural threats. It is protected on two sides, just like the US, by the oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. What industries does Canada have? Lumber, logging, mining, and that sort of thing. What does Canada produce? I'm not sure what Canada produces. So yeah, I'm not sure what the future of Canada is. Canada doesn't even have a cohesive, distinctive culture. Yeah, all we can say about the people of Canada, the Canadian culture, is that it's nicer than the Americans. If you make Americans nice people, they're Canadians. So Canadians are like nicer but poorer Americans. What future does the Canada have? I'm not sure. It all depends on the US. Canada doesn't have any real threat. The only threat, if there is any, is the US. But why would the US, invade Canada or whatever? What's the need to do that? The future of Canada, from my perspective, is like, I don't really consider Canada to be an important nation from any perspective, apart from the fact that it occupies a gigantic amount of territory, mostly empty, in North America. Yeah. Eventually, I don't know. So I don't see Canada as an important country that really matters. Yeah, it is rich, all that. It has vast amounts of natural resources. All that is there. These are some of the advantages, but it doesn't have its own culture. There is no such thing as a unifying culture or identity of Canada. It's all white settlers and settlers from other nations, other parts of the world. So I don't know what the future is. Maybe 100 years down the line, there may not even be a Canada. There could be Quebec and Alberta and Newfoundland and Saskatchewan, and all that. Who knows? Maybe you will have a resurgence of the Native American nations, which would be great. Yeah, but yeah, it's an artificially cobbled up nation, and such nations typically don't last too long. Yeah, from a historical perspective, if you look at it century upon century, typically such nations come and go, artificially constructed nations. So yeah, that's what I feel about it. Karthik says, I have experienced sleep paralysis once. It was terrifying. That's what I hear. That is really terrifying. I am fortunate I've never experienced it, but so I believe that the person who experiences sleep paralysis is typically conscious, in the sense that they're awake and they're aware of the fact that they're paralyzed, they're unable to move, and eventually the ability to move comes back after a few minutes or maybe half an hour or whatever. I'm not sure what the time period is, but even if it is a few minutes, it feels like forever. I've read about this, and it's really scary. Like, you get this cold sweat and you're really frightened, like there's something frightful in the room, but you can't see it. Maybe, I'm not sure if you can open your eyes, but yeah, that's how it is. Yeah. So yeah, I know it's quite terrifying. It's a terrifying phenomenon. Roma Bliss says, I am from Mauritius. Salut. Salut to our good friends in Ile Maurice. Okay. Who was Werner von Braun? Werner von Braun was one of the greatest rocket scientists of all time. He grew up in Germany. He participated in the Nazi war program, the development of the V1 and V2 ballistic, the V1 and the V2 rockets. One was a cruise missile, the first ever cruise missile, and the second one was the first ever ballistic missile. After World War II ended, he surrendered to the Americans. Yeah, and then he was transported to the US, and he essentially set up the American space flight program. Yeah, so the American space flight program, the father of it is Werner von Braun. He was the director of NASA. He was initially a prisoner in the US. Yeah, and has never been able to escape the Nazi taint. Some people keep on insisting on calling him a Nazi. Listen. If you are born in Germany at the time, and the only way to become a scientist is by cooperating with your government, I suppose that's what you have to do. That's one perspective of looking at it. I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying that's how it was, perhaps for him. And some people say that he did use slave labor, Jewish slave labor, or whatever, Roma slave labor, perhaps. I don't know. As part of the activities he was doing while he was in Germany. So that's a taint that has always stayed with him. Maybe it will always stay with him. He died. He was responsible for the U.S. Space program. He was the father. He oversaw personally America's moon landing program in the 1960s. Yeah, the Saturn V rocket was developed under his supervision and guidance. Yeah, so maybe the greatest rocket scientist of all time. Yeah, and it is German rocket technology that eventually made its way into the US, like I'm saying, and also into the USSR. Yeah. The R something rocket is something the Soviets developed using German know-how and technology and scientists, rocket scientists. And that USSR spaceflight program, which was developed from the German program, that eventually some of the technology was transferred to China. And that's how the Chinese program began. So it all goes back to the Germans and to Werner von Braun. Yeah. So he was possibly the greatest rocket scientist of all time. But yes, he was part of Nazi Germany, and that is something that will always stay with him, sadly. But a great scientist. All right, I think we will stop. We will end this session here. Wonderful session. Thank you all for your questions. I can see lots of questions coming in all over again, but I'm going to end it here. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll go on forever. I know I can do it all night, and you will stay on. Some of you will stay on at least. Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for your questions, participation. Wonderful. I'm glad to have reached 150, and we'll keep on going. So, until next time, take care. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.